So I think I have a bit of a goal now. I want you guys to understand when you should be using VS Code and when you should be using Visual Studio as well, because I think that we've done a lot of learnings inside the company when you should be using one and the other. I think it's fair to say that I think there's a famous saying, don't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. Anyone heard that one? It's a good one, isn't it? Einstein said that. If you're an Angular dude and you try to do all your stuff inside Visual Studio 2017, you will find it kind of painful. You can do your job, but it's a bit painful. I think you'll be more relaxed and getting things done nicer without a whole lot of auxiliary stuff if you're in VS Code. If you are doing a whole lot of web services and web API and you're doing that in VS Code, I think you'll find it more painful than it needs to be, and you should be doing that in Visual Studio. Okay, that'd be like the executive summary of what goes on in our office. Okay, so let's go through a bit of a history with this stuff. 1983, this was when Ned Kelly was a boy. We had Notepad, and we were doing everything in Notepad. And yes, right?
Windows didn't exist in 1983.
Yes, it did. Yeah, that's
1985.
Well, I'm going off Wikipedia. All right. Maybe it was Windows 1, was it?
1985.
1985, all right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right, you might be right. I got it from Wikipedia. Might be Notepad for DOS. There we go. All right. So we got Notepad, and what gets me is they've never improved anything. And I have this German guy here, and I was complaining about how it doesn't, like, can you believe they've never even added like recent menu? He goes, what are you talking about? They've never added a recent menu. And I said, they've never added a recent menu. And he said, yes, they have. And I said, let me open it up and show you. They've never added a recent menu. And he comes here and goes, what are you talking about? There's a recent menu. I never really thought of that as a recent menu, but anyway. Yeah, don't argue with the German. So in 2003, we got Notepad++. 2008, we got Sublime. Huge. 2014, Atom was popular. And then, weirdly, in 2015, Microsoft released VS Code. And that was odd. Like, they're getting into this space. Why are they doing that? Isn't Visual Studio a big text editor kind of as well? Anyway, so they announced a preview of that in November. And so if you think about it, it's been around for a couple of years by now. And we got 1.0 in April, and then I think in May we got released to the web. So things have been moving. So if you look closely at the popularity, and this is Google Trends, you can kind of see Visual Studio Code. Now it was released around here. Look at the big thing. So forget about this. A lot of people search on the words Visual Studio and Code. So that bit has to be taken off. But you can see it's growing. You can also see Notepad and Sublime. But whenever anyone shows you a Google a trends, can you see the problem here? Be careful when people give you trends. They have to change the categories. See the categories? From all categories to development tools or whatever it is. And so this shows you much more accurately. So if you look at this, you can see Sublime is really popular. You can also see that Notepad++ hasn't changed. He plods along. He's pretty popular. Forget about Notepad, but look at the growth of VS Code. It's growing fast. Anyway, so there's front-end developers. Front-end developers, they usually good-looking dudes. They would never install Visual Studio. They say it's a massive thing to install, and it's too slow during the day, and it's got menus everywhere which they couldn't understand anyway. They're just doing JavaScript, so what do they need all that for? They use Macs, and the language is typically a JavaScript and HTML, CSS, Angular, or React, or something like that. Okay? Now, They also care about CSS less than Sass. Now, this dude, you just thought he's some cool, front-end developer. This dude is a lowlife. He's a real-life lowlife. He's the one that dumped our Kylie. You didn't notice that, did you? Anyway, so let's move on to .NET developers. A .NET developer knows that Visual Studio is too slow, doesn't mind. He's okay, uses Windows. He cares about productivity. He cares about IntelliSense. He cares about navigating code using Peak. He cares about CodeLens. He's not giving all this stuff up. He wants great debugging experiences. He would never use, he's so old, he's done the old response.write. He's not doing that again. Okay, so now I should tell you that there's a few kinds of developers. Now, the back-end developer is wondering why everyone's having problems with light bulbs. He realizes he forgot to deploy the light to the database, so he just runs a script and he keeps calm, and then he blames the front end for any problems that happen, okay? There's operations. They get paged at 2 a.m. to fix light bulbs. They hand out flashlights and they go back to sleep. And then there is the front-end developer. They find out the light bulb is broken. They cover the light bulb with yellow paint. They tell the back end that the light bulb works, but only during the day. That is typical front-end developers. Now, I go and talk to a lot of companies. And when I go to talk to companies, I find that the conversations are disproportionate on the amount of time we're talking about Angular and all their front-end technologies. And they just talk about this. They put a lot of resources on it. I think it consumes so much of their front of mind that they've got it out of proportion. The front end that we're discussing will be replaced in 2 years, whatever we do. I bet you all those services and the schema and all the back end that they put much less thinking into will be there for a lot longer and cause them more pain over time when that API isn't logical, it isn't rock solid. That is, anyway, so the way I think about it in my head is that is VS Code and that is Visual Studio, okay? That's kind of the way I think you should be thinking about it. Anyway, if you, my stats on this, the .NET developer and the front-end developer, you can see the front-end developer is exactly, I reckon actually it's an order of magnitude worse than this in my conversations. Now remember, you've got to change that to programming, and you'll see it's slightly worse. Okay, so let's talk about the VS Code features. This is a little baby thing that you install. It's 30 megs. It runs Windows and Mac. It supports 30 languages out of the box. It has Git built into the menus. It's got extensions, and it's got great things in it such as IntelliSense, peak definition, debugging. Let's have a quick look. This is what it looks like. It's got a cool black menu. Server, and you can, there it is. So that's IntelliSense. So you get that with VS Code. It's as good as Visual Studio with that. It's also got Peak, so you can quickly look at a method, and without losing context like F12 would, we can quickly see what's in there. We can scroll down, and we're only looking at that little bit in the context of what we're looking at. So let's start debugging a .NET Core web application. So this is the story. We're going to, what you'll find, and there's a few guys that have got up and running in VS Code already, you'll find that the out-of-the-box experience is, well, it's not like a Tesla. You don't just get in there and start driving. It's like you've got to bolt a few things together before getting going. Okay, it'd be like my wife trying to drive a manual for the first time, okay, which she's never done, and she actually has a hard time driving a different, when we get a rental car, like it's automatic, will not drive, will not. In fact, my wife can drive from Coogee to Neutral Bay without changing lanes. Is that amazing? Yeah, it's incredible. Actually, I rely on drivers like my wife because you can just go up the side, or they're all like that. Anyway, so this is the experience. The experience is a bit like a manual. So I want to quickly show you. You can go Project Awesome, File new project, awesome. What do you expect to do? We just want to debug. We want to set a breakpoint and debug. Let's have a look at what's involved. Here it is, looking pretty cool, right? So we've just created project awesome. What do we do to run this thing? You know what to do? How do we run this thing? Well, we're going to click this little green button. Okay? So we click the little green button. This will pop open. You go, huh? Okay, what do we want to do here? I don't want Node. It's there twice. I'm not sure why. I'll choose .NET Core. That's what I'm after. So we click that, and it goes, whoa, what happened? So what it does is it adds a couple of these JSON files, which weren't there. You go, whoa, that's cool. So we've got this JSON file. You might have a quick look at the JSON file. And you can see it's telling Visual Studio how it's going to run the application. And you go, all right, well, it needed a file. Good to go. Let's try that again. So you click on this little guy, and you go, click, and it goes, there's no task runner configured. Okay. I didn't know I needed one of those, so I'll just click Configure Task Runner. Click. And it goes, what task runner? Well, if you know what you're talking, you know that grunt is dead. It doesn't say rip. Gulp is RIP as well. Which one should we choose? TypeScript sounds cool, but it's actually .NET Core. So let's choose our .NET Core type runner. Okay, so now we're good to go. So what do we do now? We click this run button. Okay, you ready? Click. It says, launch JSON must be configured. Launch JSON. You added launch JSON. Anyway, so let's click that. How many people can spot the error? Put your hand up if you spot the error. Full show of hands, come on. We got one. Come on. Got 2, 3, all right. Cool. So if you look closely, what this should say is fill in the blank here. Okay, but it looks like it's actually there. So we've got to put project awesome there. Anyway, so when they should auto correct that personally. But if you have a look in this file, which you probably will then start looking because you've got to work out what the error is, you'll see there's a path to the core app, and you can see that this is telling it what to do when the browser. So you can see there's a Windows one here, there's an OS X one here, and there's Linux. So whichever one you're on, you might configure that to open browsers and do things. All right, cool. So now we understand that file. We'll go back here and replace that with projectawesome.dll. And that should be good. And we'll give this another go. You ready? You ready? Let's click. Click. And it says, download .NET Core Debugger in the command palette. What is a command palette? Well, you'll know that there's a keystroke to get you the command palette. If you don't know the keystroke, you go View, Command Palette. Okay, it won't take you long. You'll find that. You'll open that up, and you'll press Close on that, and then you'll open this command palette, and you'll type download .NET Core Debugger, right? So there's, sorry? Yeah, that's, well, they just told you what to do. So you should know what to do. They just said download the .NET Core Debugger. But maybe you might not read error messages, which is pretty common. Anyway, so this starts doing this. And you download package OmniSharp. Who's heard of OmniSharp before? Anyone heard of OmniSharp? Not a soul. Well, let me just tell you a little story. There is a guy called Jason Emerson. He is a guy from Manchester. He's just a coder at a company. And he decides he wants to start his own. You should be grateful. I think I'm one of the few people that know this story. He decides, because I wanted to know what possessed him to do this, but I'll tell you. So Jason Emerson, he goes home and he goes, I want to start on my own personal project at home, but I don't want to feel like I'm at work. I want to do this little pet project. I want to do it in Linux. So he starts with Notepad, or he's starting to use Vim, a nice black screen. And get this, he realizes he needs IntelliSense. Now, instead of giving up on that idea and just booting into Windows and using Visual Studio, he decides he will write IntelliSense for Vim. Okay? So he writes IntelliSense for Vim, and then he gets going on his personal project. He reads on a blog one day about some some guy using Emacs and how he wishes he had IntelliSense because he's doing C# development. And so the whole reason that I asked Jason, why didn't you just go back to Windows and use Visual Studio? I didn't want to feel like I was at work, Adam. I do not get that boundary, but anyway. So he reads this blog and he goes, you know what? This poor guy needs what I've already built. He tells the guy in a comment on his blog, I have something that I've written. I could put it up somewhere. And then he decides, I'll put it up on GitHub, creates a GitHub account, and needs a name for his project. And goes, what will I call it? I'd like to call it C# Everywhere. I won't call it that. I'll be creative. I'll make it Everywhere C#. And then he goes, what's the Greek word for everywhere? It's omni. So he calls it OmniSharp. And then he uploads it to GitHub. These other guy, and he helps this guy use it for Emacs. And then unbeknownst to him, you know, when you put things up on GitHub, things just happen. Some Korean dudes that he has no idea who they are, they create it to work with Atom or what's one of the other text editors? Was it Sublime? I think, yeah, they did it for Sublime, you're right. And then some guys from England took over and maintained the project. And then he gets a call from Microsoft. This is like 4 years later. And I think it was David Fowler from the ASP.NET team covertly starts talking to him because they don't want to tell him that they're developing this. I don't know if they were actually developing this at that time. But saying, hey, what you've done there with that IntelliSense Everywhere, that's pretty cool. Maybe you can help us do it for Atom. So then he starts helping them do it for Atom, and then it ends up in Monaco. You know how in visualstudio.com you can actually do coding. So it ends up in there, and then it ends up in here, and then he changes, because the compiler that he used for Monaco and those things is he went and ripped it out of Xamarin, because that was open source, so he took that compiler. And when Microsoft released Roslyn, then he switched the compiler. Anyway, there's the backstory for that OmniSharp. Sorry about that. So it starts automatically downloading OmniSharp, and then we're ready to go, I think. We press this button. Should we? Yeah. We press it again, and bingo, finally. So to get it going, we drop down into our breakpoint, and we're all happy. So.
You could just use Visual Studio, would have been here for about 4 hours ago.
Thank you, yes. All right, so it's just like this, Greg. You come through and jump through a hoop, and another hoop, and another hoop, and one final hoop, and you're in business. That's how it is. All right, let's watch that again. So we select the .NET Core environment, the task runner, update the DLL, download the core debugger, and we're done. Great. So that was that. Now I'm going to tell you something else. That, as far as I know, how many people here know about the Visual Studio Code Insiders version? 1. Okay, you should get a gold star. Okay, and very, very few people know about this. So this is another version that you can get. And I'm going to tell you, you definitely should install these. They install side by side, and this is what happens when you install this guy. Now, be aware that this preview version updates every day. It's always updating. I should also tell you, every single person in our Queensland office runs this, and I ask them all, has anybody had one issue with this? Because updating daily, and they've been running some large projects up there for a long time, they have never once had an issue. Okay? So, have you had an issue, sir? Not once. Yeah, pretty amazing. I'm sure something will go wrong, but so far it's been rock solid, considering it gets updated daily. The experience is better, but you've got to be aware. It's only for real men. Okay? Otherwise, you go back to the other one. So, let's have a look here. Let's open that C# file again, Project Awesome, and you'll notice even when you do nothing, it starts downloading OmniSharp because it sees the C# file and it automatically fixes that. So it detects that. It knows we need the .NET Core Debugger, so it just starts downloading that guy too without even asking, just being automatic, okay? So then it puts up this little warning, doesn't tell you you've made an error. It just says, we need some required assets. Is that cool? Yes, no? I'll say yes. All right, so we we click yes, and over there that launch.json and task.json. Now be aware that puts it in a folder called .vs code. Okay. Now in Visual Studio, we also have one of those folders, and it's called .vs. Okay, cool. So there are those two folders. Let's go and look at one of those. Remember that launch.json? Let's go and have a look at that guy. Do you notice anything different about this one? What's different? It's already put the project awesome.dll. Okay, so that was pretty sweet. Thank you. Very good. And it just runs. Okay, so how many hoops were there? One hoop just to download VS Insiders. That's it. Cool? Great. So the summary of VS Code Insiders. It's a much nicer experience. It's got bleeding edge features, daily releases, and I think it's pretty cool. How many people think VS Code sounds pretty cool? Okay, all right, everyone. Okay, so before we move on, I don't want you to fall asleep. Everyone stand up. This is voluntary. I just don't want you to fall asleep for the next sections. Wiggle, a bit to the left, a bit to the right.